Benvenuti a tutti, and welcome to another edition of Italian America Long Island. My name is Dave Anthony Setadicati. On this episode, we have a really wonderful guest. She is such an accomplished young woman. She probably knows more about Italian history than most Italians do. She's got her doctorate in Renaissance history from the State University of Stony Brook. She's also an avid surfer, and she performs on the horse in equestrian events like dressage. She's just an all-around wonderful person. So please welcome my guest tonight, Dr. Christine Contrada.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on the show. So Christine, you have so many things that we can talk about. I know that you have your degree is in Renaissance history.
Yeah.
And what motivated you to study Italian Renaissance history?
Yeah, it's a long road to a PhD in anything, but in this case, Latin was always my favorite subject in high school, so I had the joy of my Latin teacher taking us to Italy and when we were kids. We were 17 at the time, but I fell in love with Italy from that trip, and then as a student at James Madison University, I studied abroad for a semester, and at that point I really decided, this is an amazing culture and an amazing history that I really want to focus on. So that's what led me to go to Stony Brook to get a PhD in Italian Renaissance history.
Fantastic. Now, your own personal heritage is also Italian, right? Would you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So my family, 3 of my grandparents are 100% Italian, and the ones that I'm closest to were from Gaeta. So that's it's a lovely city that's equidistant between Rome and Naples, right on the coast. So I do have relatives from outside of Naples as well, and then Tricarico, which is a little bit further south.
So you do have a lot of relatives still living in Italy?
Distant cousins, but nobody. They've been in the United States for a long time.
Okay. Now, do you keep in touch with your Italian relatives at all?
Not so much. This is one thing that I really am looking to do in the future, is to connect more clearly with the distant cousins. I think it will be fun. And Italians being the way that they are, I know that they will embrace me with open arms as soon as I make contact. So I'm looking forward to that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I understand that you've got your Italian citizenship, and you also hold an American citizenship.
Yeah.
So what was the process involved in getting your Italian citizenship?
It is like climbing Mount Everest, and it is different for everyone, but I encourage people that are motivated to look into their family histories to see if it's possible. Mine is it's a birthright citizenship, so you effectively have to prove that you have a citizenship connection to Italy that has not been cut, so that none of your ancestors that you're using to get the citizenship naturalized before their children were born, and then that's an uncut line in a sense. In my case, it was a lot of paperwork and confusing, because I thought, for many, many years that I couldn't get the citizenship because census data is not always accurate. So if any of your viewers are looking at census data going, oh, I can't because here, my grandmother, my grandfather said that they were American to the census reporters. My grandmother, somebody probably rang the doorbell and she didn't know the answer to the question or was afraid to say that she was still Italian, but I thought she was naturalized and she wasn't. So
that allowed you, because she never became naturalized in her whole life?
Eventually. But not until, this is my great-grandmother, so not until my grandmother was born. So at that point, it didn't matter.
Okay. All right. So that's an interesting little wrinkle in the law there.
So always look for that naturalization document.
Okay. And now, did you do this is this done directly through the authorities in Italy, or do you do it through the Italian consulate in New York?
So it's a process that it happens on both sides of the pond, however you choose to do it. There are services that will help one to collect these documents. I'm a historian, so it's probably the first time in my life that was a really helpful degree, because I was able to collect all the documents myself. So you get the birth documents from Italy, and then you get any death certificates, any marriage documents from here, and then the naturalization stuff is on this side. So a lot of it is, in my case, it's from New York. So it's a lot of hoop jumping to try to figure out where the records actually are. But with this type of citizenship application, most people go through the consulate, unless you have to do a court case in Rome. So if you have female ancestors before 1948, you probably do have to. Women in Italy couldn't vote before 1948, so they were not able to pass citizenship. But effectively, the court in Rome, is a place where these trials can be heard, so that you can make an argument to say that you should have Italian citizenship by birth, because it's discriminatory against women. I didn't have to go that route.
Okay. I'm a little confused because you said it was your grandmother?
No, my great-grandmother.
Your great-mother. So you're not getting your citizenship from her, but from her son?
No, so I am. It's her husband. So I could have done it either way. I could have had a court case. Basically how Italy does it, it's the path of least resistance. So if you have a male citizen that you can use, they would prefer that you use that.
So even though he was...
Either or.
Well, he is a blood relative.
Yeah. So it's my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother. I guess I talk about my great-grandmother because I knew her.
Okay.
She was a living relative. She lived to be a very old woman, so I knew her for many, many years.
Okay, so now, if I wanted to start to do this, do I get a form from the consulate?
It's a good question. Start collecting documents. Actually, the first thing to do, if you plan on going through the consulate, I would suggest going to the consulate's website to try to make an appointment. There are oftentimes, and don't get discouraged, they release them in batches, but that's the best thing to do because your appointment will probably be a few years out. So that will give you, it's years. So it will give you enough time to collect all the documents that you need, because the document collection is not going to take that long. It would be discouraging, I think, to go through all that hard work, then sign up for an appointment and realize you have to wait.
Okay, is the appointment like a hearing of some sort, or?
They sit with you and go through your folder. Rather than going through the consulate in New York, I actually did go through the court in Rome, but because I couldn't get an appointment. So effectively the consulates are breaking Italian law if they won't give you an appointment less than 2 years out. That may change. That's something that's in flux now with the pandemic too, that the courts in Italy are actually giving the consulates more time, but you can expect about a 2-year wait just for an appointment. Then it takes them some time, after they meet with you, then they review your case, and then they send you word, basically via email, if it's been accepted.
Okay, so where would you get your great-grandmother's birth certificate?
Yeah, the commune of their birth. So you have to, do a little family history if you don't know where they were born.
Do you call them up? Do you send them an email?
I went. You can.
You
yeah,
went.
you
so
can.
you actually, because I know you've been to Italy
Got
many times, right?
And I went.
All right, so you got on a plane and you actually went to the comune, to the little office that they have.
Yeah, and they're very generous. Italians are generous about so many things, and this is one of those, very different than in New York. The privacy laws are also different. Like in New York State, I didn't have this experience because my relatives' documents were in the city, but there are a couple of hoops to jump through in terms of the state, in terms of accessing like death certificates, because they want to be sure that it's your family.
Oh, especially in New York with the death certificate.
Absolutely. So Italy is you just walk in and they're here, have it all.
Okay.
It's like, here's the book. But really sweet, they go above and beyond. If you ask, they will, give you even more information than just that. So they gave me the locations, the houses where my great-grandparents were born, so that, after I left, I could take a walk and go and see. And that was really, really meaningful to do that.
What a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So, What are the benefits of having this dual citizenship?
Europe is your oyster. I mean, that, whether or not you choose to live in Italy, you can live anywhere that you'd like, inside of the European Union if you establish residency. So, many people will do it for jobs. I mean, you have immediate access as a resident of Italy with citizenship to the healthcare system as well. That socialized medical system is open to you. And you don't pay taxes in Italy if you don't live there. If you carry dual citizenship, if you live there and work there, then you would. But so there's no economic reason not to.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest. And it's a good option.
Does it make traveling in Italy easier?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Some people do, and it's a great point. That they. The airport experience is so different anywhere in Europe because you just walk through the biometric line. You skip the line for tourists or the line for anybody who has citizenship outside of the European Union.
But with all of the hassle to get it,
Mm-hmm.
if you're just going to go for a week, it's not worth it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's you have to be motivated, I think, for other reasons.
Yeah, I guess if if your company is sending you there for a year, rather than getting a visa, if you are of Italian extraction, it might be
and
easier.
you can stay. You can stay past the 90 day. You can stay forever. If you plan on taking a trip that's more than 3 months.
So you've been to Italy so many different times. Mm-hmm. Tell us about some of your most memorable trips.
My adventures. It's impossible to pick a favorite area of Italy because every time you go to one, you think, oh, this is, I've arrived. This is Dante's paradise, and here I am. But I really found, maybe this is because I'm a native Long Islander, I've enjoyed the islands very much. I think, especially in a post-pandemic world, it's nice to escape to a little Mediterranean island. Giglio, a dear friend of mine, and I have been there a few times. It's near Elba, but it's just so perfectly idealistic, and swimming in the Mediterranean every day and drinking the local wine, and the islands are wonderful. I do enjoy them.
Isn't that the infamous island that the ship of the Coastal Line
Yes, it is. I know, and you can see they've actually memorialized it in a very beautiful way. They have a statue there for the victims of that, but that's exactly the infamous cruise ship driver who thought that it would be a good idea, which it was the worst idea ever, to get close to shore so that he could wave. So it's infamous for that.
So that's off the coast of Elba.
Same island chain.
Same island chain.
Mm-hmm.
And where exactly, is that in the northern part of Italy?
It's Tuscany. It actually is Tuscany. It's off the coast of Tuscany.
Okay, well that sounds like a beautiful, beautiful place to go.
Hiking and
Yeah, terrific. Now, you're planning on a move to Italy. Mm-hmm. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the New York. That's the $1 million question. Yeah. I would like to try it. I think, especially with the Italian American background that I have, and just this overwhelming love of Italian history. I want to try it. Figure why not? It's like this is another post-pandemic world. Give it a shot. Italy is very, very different from New York. I don't know if it could be any more different from New York. So it's going to be an adventure.
Right. You had mentioned that Italy is a great place to visit, mm-hmm. but a very difficult place to live in.
Yeah.
Could you explain that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's it's a sort of the classic experience that people will talk about from a sociological perspective. But famously, the book The Italians kind of lays this out. But I think, at a core, what the difference is that when you're there on vacation, you see that veneer of La Dolce Vita. You see the pace of life is slower, and, the food is marvelous, and the history is overwhelming, and there's a tremendous amount of beauty in Italy. And that's really, what you see, and it's the truth. It's a veneer that there's a reality to it. But when you live there, it's the bureaucracy. The lentocrazia, as Italians Italians call it, that it's a very slow moving.
Mentocracy.
It's very slow moving. So it requires a tremendous amount of patience, that when you're on vacation, you don't need to deal with the utilities, you don't need to deal with the speed of the internet, but I think especially maybe depending on what culture you come from, but as New Yorkers, we are very attuned to speed. And, that there is no rat race in Italy. It's just non-existent.
Right, and you had mentioned that New Yorkers are more likely to have a get-it-done mentality than the Italians. Yeah. So you're expecting that there's going to be some difficulties in getting your internet hookup when you move there, or that sort of thing. Would you buy a home there, or would you rent?
I think maybe to rent first and see, make sure that it's the right spot for me, and kind of get a sense of things. It's that push-pull, here on Long Island, it's like I spend some of my time on Long Island and some of my time in the city, and I love both. So you have to find that middle ground between the urban and the suburban.
Would it be Giglio that you're going to be moving to?
No, I think it is a little bit too isolated for the long term, because especially in the off season, it's a small, the community that stays there all year round is quite small. But maybe Rome. I think Rome is a lot like New York, and the suburbs of Rome being as close to the beach as they are, or Long Island-esque. So that might be a good transition.
Because I know you love the beach because you are a surfer.
I do surf. Catania, I have heard that there is a surf school in Catania, so I'm very eager to check that out.
Wow.
So Sicily. There was a longboard competition in Long Beach recently here on Long Island, and one of the competing surfers was from Sardinia. So he was a nice, really interesting to talk to him about his experience surfing in the Mediterranean.
Are you going to bring your board, or are you going to buy one there?
Yeah, I'm probably going to buy one there. Shipping containers, that's the other thing about the move. He's like, it's too big, it's too heavy.
Yeah. So now, I know this may be a little bit too personal, but to move there, you're going to have some kind of employment.
Yeah.
So what do you envision? Of course, you have your doctorate degree. Are you going to seek employment at a university, or?
I think so. I really enjoy teaching. I have a great passion for working with students, and I really look forward to doing that. I think I will. I'm also teach online. So, that I will do, I will teach here from there, but I'd like to get back into a classroom. I also write for a magazine, a news magazine in Florence. I write for NIAF occasionally with Ambassador Magazine, and I have some journalistic pursuits that I'd like to get into, and I find that the muse that is Italy is far more inspiring because of the types of things that I write about, so I'd like to get more into that.
Well, I've read one of your pieces.
Thank you.
And as a former English teacher, I can tell you it is the best thing I have ever read. You are such a beautiful writer.
That's very kind of you.
There was a show, I saw it, I was streaming, and it was a woman from New Jersey who did like a travelogue of Italy. Would you ever think of doing something like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess many people have asked, actually, because I can see the connection between teaching students and, working with people that are visiting, right? Like in the tourist sector of saying, well, you're educating people, basically, about the place that they're visiting. So I have thought about it. I've never really entered the blogging sphere or anything like that, but who knows? That's definitely an option.
Do you know, my neighbor, that's what he does for a living.
Really? That's fascinating. Good for him.
He has blogs, and he has his... I mean, how do you make money on these things? How do you do it?
Yeah.
But he does, and that's how he makes his living.
Good for him. That's awesome.
And it's historical. He does New York history.
Oh, well, I'm going to follow your neighbor's blog.
Wow. He might be able to give you some hints about that, getting set up
that's
there.
Awesome.
That is very, very fascinating. Now, you have your doctorate in Renaissance history. What attracted you to that time period?
I think it's an interesting question. I thought about doing ancient history because I love the historical part about studying Latin. But I think what attracted me to the Renaissance is that Renaissance peoples are actually obsessed with ancient Rome themselves, especially in 15th century Florence. The Humanists that I did most of my research around very much focused on the ancient world. So I was studying it through Renaissance peoples, and I do think it was that study abroad semester in Florence where I really felt an affinity towards Florence, and Florence's golden age, the Renaissance was born in Florence, so it's impossible not to make that connection. And I think it's so interesting how the humanists took the ancient world and used it, but not in like an armchair type of way, that they used it actually to live better lives. Like, what do ancient peoples have to teach us about our modern existence? So philosophically, I always found it fascinating.
So, some people in our audience may not be as educated as you are. Who are the humanists?
Oh, the humanists, thank you. I always tell my students, raise your hand and ask if I'm speaking gibberish and you don't know what I'm talking about. So humanism is a type of philosophy that was popular in 15th, 16th century Italy. And it's the study of, basically the study of what mankind has produced, what mankind is capable of. So you study history, you study the arts, and you look for ways to live well by doing that. The way that humanism functions in Italy is that they look to the ancient world. They wanted to see how the ancient Romans could teach them about living well, and then they combined it with their contemporary sort of situation. So it's a way of seeing. It's like a worldview, basically, for early modern people.
Now, I'm getting from what you said that it wasn't just limited to Italy. There were humanists in other countries.
So it starts in Italy, but then it moves northward. And the timeline's a little bit different, so we'll get to Northern Europe later, but if you've ever studied this in school, you're like, oh, there's French humanists, and it will eventually get into places like England under Queen Elizabeth. When it moves north, it's a little bit more complicated because it hits the Reformation, so it deals with religion in a different way in Northern Europe, but the Italians were very classical in their approach to it, and dealt less with the questions of Catholicism.
So who were the great humanist philosophers from Italy?
You know them. Machiavelli. Machiavelli is famously one of the most, I guess, in terms of impact, I would say that he's probably had the most on us.
I am dumbfounded because in my mind Machiavelli is like an evil person.
Yeah, right.
And here we have, he's a humanist, he wants to live better by studying the classics.
He does, but yeah. So Machiavelli's a complicated bird. He's one of my favorite humanists because he is. So he's a little bit later in humanism. He's the beginning of the 16th century. So the ones before Machiavelli are probably what you were thinking of, like Pico della Mirandola. There are a bunch of them in Florence who are very idealistic. They're like, oh, we can because the perfect state. Machiavelli looked at the world around him in the 16th century and said, okay, the reality check is this, because there were Italian wars going on at that point.
Right.
And there are problems with the Medici and the state in Florence, so he's being very realistic in ways that earlier humanists are not.
I know that Raphael, from that time period, he relied a lot on the classical. He had a very famous painting of, I guess it was Socrates or the
School of Athens. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it went over into the arts also.
Yeah, and Sistine Chapel ceiling, famously Michelangelo's image of Adam and God's, the fingers touching, the hands of God.
Right.
That's absolutely a representation of humanism in art, because you can see that gift of the intellect that he's giving to Adam in that case.
And directly from God, too.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see the religion in it, And Catholicism is very deeply entrenched inside of humanism.
What a wonderful thing. I mean, I love Italian art. I mean, it's just, especially Renaissance art.
And if you study the philosophy, you understand it so much better.
I know, you're probably right, but I never got that deep. But I read a book on Michelangelo and did a paper on him when I was in high school, and it had a tremendous impact on me. What an amazing artist. I mean, I don't think the world has ever seen an artist as great as him.
And perfectly snarky too, right? He has a very fun personality. Michelangelo is, he did his own thing, it was okay with being a salmon swimming upstream.
Oh boy. I mean, to talk with you is like to talk to, I feel like I'm right there in the Renaissance with
Thank
you.
you.
Like
It's
you
good
you know these
compliment.
personalities
Yeah, I
so
was
well.
saying, I told my students, I teach at Stony Brook University, and I told my students this week, I said, I know the Medici family better than my own family at this point because and they just kind of looked at me, and I'm like, I know, I've scared you all off, but.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating, and what a wonderful time in history. I mean, just the greatest time in history.
Yeah.
Just the arts flowered so much, and there's nothing better than Italian art and Italian music as
I
far as I'm
agree.
concerned. It's just the
completely
greatest.
agree.
So now, we admire Italy so much because of our heritage, and we have that Italian DNA. You've been to Italy so much. What are some of the negative and repulsive, even, aspects of
I
Italian?
love this question. I
Yeah.
love that you were brave enough to ask this question. I don't, and then I thought long and hard about it. The thing is that the good certainly outweighs the bad, at least in my
Okay.
experience.
We're
But
going to give that. It's a
yeah,
granted.
I definitely will give them that. But there's something about even the things in Italy that irritate you, that they're presented in a way where they're almost quaint. It's like the logistics of daily life of you walk all the way across town because the sign on the window said that they were going to be open at 3:00, and you get there and everything's shut. The lights are out, and maybe they'll come back tomorrow, It's those types of things. It's the unexpected. But then you also get the unexpected adventures, and the generosity of Italian people, even when you don't get what you want because the system is not working. They're so generous inside of that you have a very forgiving attitude over time, I think.
So when I visited Italy, and I've only made one trip there, and but the tour guide said to us, not too many people in Italy have dryers.
Yes, yeah, be prepared to hang your laundry.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Yeah. So they're not as with the modern conveniences. They don't have what we have.
No, the electric is very expensive in Italy, and so is gas. So whatever kind of dryer that you would have, it would not be cost effective to do that. But you get that sun-kissed laundry. It's part of the experience.
Yes, I imagine so. But I did kind of feel like, well, Italy is almost like a third world country as far as technology.
It is in some ways, yeah. Internet speed, don't expect to be streaming anything with much reliability. So yeah, I think you're right in terms of the technology side of Italy. Which is ironic because of some of the things that they do that are, extremely forward in terms of technology, like their cars. If you think about, Lamborghini now is flipping over to the electric models, and they're determined, and that's, incredible. But
yeah, there's nothing.
nothing like an Italian car.
Oh, you're not kidding, boy! Right, I would like to do a show on Italian cars. That would be a nice one. They have a few dealerships on the island now.
Oh, nice.
There's
test driving.
Yes, and in fact, I was driving and came to a traffic light, and I looked to the right, I looked to the left. There was a Maserati on either side of me.
Wow. Okay.
Two different models, but I said,
Maserati sandwich.
yes, that's what it was. And it was so unusual, and I said, well, I've never seen a Maserati on Long Island, but
Good for you. And you saw two at once. That's
saw two at
awesome.
once.
Nice.
Two at once.
All right.
Fantastic. So this is really a very, very interesting thing. I mean, you have your citizenship, and that's been in force now for how long have you had that?
Only this year, so I've only had it for a few months. I keep looking at the passport like there's somebody else's face is going to appear in it. It is very new. It's exciting, but it's definitely new.
Now, did you need to speak Italian to get these documents?
No, I mean, it helps. It definitely, and just the pleasantries, I think. Italians are very willing to work with you if you at least attempt to speak the language, but it can be done without. It's easier if you do speak the language, because when you do things like deal with the consulate's website, that's oftentimes you're dealing with, an Italian response to an email, or so it does help.
I know that you have your degree in Renaissance history. If you back in time, is that the time period that you would choose?
It's an interesting question. As a woman, I would be deeply, it would be a deep change, I would have to say, because of my lack of agency. That's the reality of the situation for, women in most of human history, is that there's not a tremendous amount of equality.
Well, Christine, you are certainly a fascinating
Study
person.
history.
Studying history is
There you
great,
go.
and I want to thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing so much of your experience
Appreciate that.
with us, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed speaking to you so much. Thank you.